Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
This is America's Outdoor Talk program.
Are you ready to get rowdy?
Outdoors This Week with your host, Alex Langer. Alex Langer. We've got fishing.
Believe me, folks, I have been there, and the fishing has been tremendous.
Hiking.
Adios. Have a nice trip.
Camping.
This is a real adventure.
How do you know?
When you're an experienced woodsman like me, you get a feel for these things.
Oh, really?
Heck, we've even got kayaking.
I'm going to show you kids the time of your life.
We've got all the info you need for a safe and fun day in the sun.
It's a darn good thing we found you when we did. There's something horrible roaming these woods.
And you've got Outdoors This Week. Outdoors This Week. And now, here's your host, Alex Langer.
Why, thank you, Mr. Announcer. That would be me, Alex Langer, your humble host, and today we have an amazing show for you. I know I always say that, but half the time I'm not quite serious, but today I'm really serious. We have with us the 2013 FLW Forrest Wood Cup champion. He just won this world championship a few weeks ago, and we're blessed and happy to have Randall Tharp with us today. Randall Tharp is living proof that the American dream of becoming a full-time professional bass angler is still attainable by anybody. In 2007, Randall was still swinging a hammer as the owner of a prosperous construction business in Birmingham, Alabama, and now he's a professional full-time angler. A lot of construction guys end up bass fishing professionally. Have you ever noticed that, Linda?
That's so weird. I never made that connection before.
Even back in the day when I was fishing, a lot of guys that owned construction companies, most of it at that time was economic, because if you own your own business, you could take days off and practice and support yourself. But you can actually support yourself now with bass fishing, which you couldn't 20 or even 30 years ago. It was impossible.
Yeah.
So everybody had to have a sideline, but today some of these kids come right out of high school and college and never have a real job. Not that bass fishing is not a real job, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
So Randall Tharp always loved bass fishing, but he didn't discover tournaments until the late 1990s. Let me give you some of Randall's stats. His career earnings at a fairly young age are over $1.2 million. That's unbelievable. That includes 7 wins and out of 123 events fished and 4 appearances in the Forrest Cup World Championship. So that's about it. And then, as if that's not enough, we have all of our usual suspects. We have all of Lynn's Southern Gentlemen. We have good old what's-his-name, and then we have good old what's-his-face. We have all of them.
We have all of them.
We have them all. We have everybody from Larry Whiteley to Sammy Lee to Wade Bourne to Ron Lindner. Ron is Lynn's only Northern gentleman, so they've all got something to say. They're all interesting. And we'll be right back after this. Don't go away. This time, I really, really, really mean it.
Hang tight. More of America's Outdoor Talk program, Outdoors This Week, after this.
Hi folks, Ron Linder here for Linder's Angling Edge Television. We're still playing on the Pursuit channel. You can go look us up. And if you want to know the time, and we're also playing on WFN, that's the World Fishing Network. And we're still playing on some Christian channels. You could look that all up on, go to the web to Linder Media or anglingedge.com, anglingedge.com. You can also get my book right there, the new book we just got. New old book at anglingedge.com. All right, it's time to comment. Last week we talked about Brandon Polanic, a new pro rung, 25-year-old kid that ran all the way up the St. Lawrence River, went 106 miles one way every day for 4 days in spite of waves and the whole ball of wax, really interesting. And he had to do this in order to qualify for the Bassmaster Classic. This is a wild run, something that older guys normally wouldn't do. Well, you just had another review of Chris Lane at the Lake St. Clair Bassmaster. Just did the same thing. He qualified on the last tournament of the whole season by winning it. By the way, Bassmaster, as opposed to FLW, if you win one tournament within their league schedule, you make it to the Bassmaster Classic. And this is vitally important to these pros. This is something you gotta do. And he was out. There was no way that he could win make it except for a win. Brandon, he did this a little different. He won this thing at the mouth of Lake Huron, where the St. Clair River enters into the St. Clair River, then it goes through Lake St. Clair, and then goes back out the Detroit River. To give you folks a little, that's about a 70-mile run each day, but it's nowhere near as rough a ride as Brandon did. On the other hand, over here, this Chris Lane beat old veteran angler, and older. He's been around, won some Bassmaster Classics, etc. A lot of wins. He was running out, hasn't had a win in a long time. Went out to Lake Erie and ran real far, and he went 3 days that way. But the fourth day, the fish didn't hold up. There are pictures that I had on my Facebook, Ron Linder. Facebook Ron Linder. You could see these guys, they're in bass boats. And we filmed walleye tournaments for years out on the Great Lakes. We fished tournaments, walleye tournaments, as well as bass tournaments on these big, gigantic waters. Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, Lake Michigan, up in Sturgeon Bay. And these bass guys are beginning to learn what the cost of running a bass boat. They used to look at us funny, these Yankees, while we're running the Lund boats we run. And they are fast getting a lesson. Why? Because we have been fishing these things, these huge open windswept waters for years. Bubba is finally getting the taste of why. But these guys ain't all Bubbas. A lot of them are Californians, and they, and unfortunately, some of these circuits don't allow you to have two boats. The three boats would actually be smart. In the old days, you could do this. You could have a tiny skiff, because there's times you could want to do this. If you wanted to cross some real shallow water, pull over it, and you had some backwater oxbow in a river. These things have been won on things like this. In these huge runs, these 70, 100-mile runs one way every day for 4 days, and at the mercy of the winds. And once they get there, the winds, you guys that fish Lake Erie, like Mark Davis, who came in second, he only had 4 fish the last day, and the wind howled, and of course these fish do move out there. And just moving around out on Lake Erie isn't as easy as it sounds. You might get to a spot, but for you to get to spot 2 or 3, unless they're right next door to each other, but if you got to make a 5-mile run to your next spot, it isn't that easy. And so little by little, Bubba is starting to learn as he fishes these big Great Lakes tournaments. And both FLW and Bassmaster and other entities are starting to fish them. That the problem that a lot of these northern anglers have faced these many years. Well, that's it for now. Ron Linder for Linder's Angling Edge. And by the way, go look up at anglingedge.com.
Shade fishing coming up on Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World.
Would you like to spend less time on the couch and more time in the fresh air? Would you like your kids to stare at a bobber instead of the TV? Would you gladly trade in your microwave for a Dutch oven? Then you belong at Bass Pro Shops. Every week, we offer free skills workshops to help you get started. See the store or go to BassPro.com for more information. Bass Pro Shops. Your adventure starts here.
Shade might be your most important resource for catching bass on hot August days. They're going to seek the coolest spot they can find, and sometimes that's in deeper water or where spring-fed streams run into a lake, but sometimes it's shade cast by bridges, rock bluffs, trees, boat docks, and anything else. Troll around the bank looking for shaded areas, then hit it 3 or 4 times before moving on. You can cover a lot of water fishing this way, and your strikes per cast ratio will greatly improve. You can fish in the sun 6 inches out of a shadow and not take a hit. However, the moment you drop a shaky head or a sinkhole into the middle of that shade, it'll almost instantly be engulfed. Now, for more bass fishing tips, go to BassPro.com and click on Source One News and Tips. Before we go, I want to say thank you to all you military folks listening out there on the American Forces Radio Network. I'm Larry Whiteley, and this is Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World.
Well, Larry, I love you, but nothing, I repeat, nothing gets almost instantly engulfed when you're fishing. That's not the way it works.
It's not magic.
That's right. But we love Larry anyway, and he is from Bass Pro Shop, so we got to be nice to him because he's been nice to us for 20 years. And I don't want to make Mr. What's-His-Name angry, but...
And he's handsome.
That's right. But he's also married, Liz. So,
I know.
So let me tell you what. Right from Larry, we have with us the guy that just won the 2013 FLW Forrest Wood Championship. That is saying something. This guy, Randall Tharp, is from Birmingham, Alabama, and he runs a construction business, but over the last few years, Randall has amassed a stunning resume in professional fishing. What's most important is he's done it all on his own without initial help of big money sponsors or without the waypoints of other anglers in his GPS. I mean, and these days, that is saying a lot. And he's always loved bass fishing. Randall didn't discover tournaments until the late 1990s. After a few wildcats with the BFL, he humbly realized he had a lot to learn. It's kind of like me. After I caught some big fish on my own, I figured these tournaments would be a piece of cake. Boy, I couldn't have been more wrong. And that was back in the 1970s. So today it's times 10. Help me welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Randall Tharp, this year's 2013 FLW Forrest Wood Cup champion. Randall, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. That sounds really good, Forrest Wood Cup champion in front of my name. I'll never get tired of hearing that.
That's right. Never get tired of hearing that. Does it seem real, Randall?
You know, it does. I mean, I've come close to winning that championship before. In 2011, I finished second to Scott Martin, and you know, I was prepared. I was ready. I felt like I was due just because I've come close before, and yeah, I was prepared for what happened. Tell me about the Red River, how that all worked out. Well, I mean, I fished, that was the third tournament I've fished on the Red River in my career, and I've done well in every one of them. It's just one of those places that sets up really well for my fishing style. You know, I had a fourth place earlier this year there. I had a really good opportunity to win going into the final day, but you know, I got it done when it mattered the most, and I would love going back there. The people in Shreveport were awesome. I mean, the fan base there is unbelievable, and they were real respectful on the water. I mean, I wouldn't change a thing about it. Shreveport is definitely a bass fishing town. You know, if there's another bass fishing town besides Birmingham, Alabama, where you're from, it's definitely Shreveport. You know, I was there for the Classic about a year ago, and everybody talked, ate, and breathed bass fishing. Unlike Boston, where I'm from, where if you mention bass fishing, they look like you got two heads. Yeah, but maybe that's okay. So, Randall, tell me about your winning pattern. What did you do? Well, you know, I did a lot of different things throughout the 4 days of the tournament. I mean, the first day, you know, I caught several key fish, you know, flipping, which is one of my strengths. And but, you know, there were several key baits. I would say that the best thing I had going was swimming a jig through some pads. I probably weighed in more doing that than anything else, but a square bill crankbait as well as a frog came into play for me, you know, the final day. Tell me about swimming a jig, because it's something that a lot of people don't know about, but it's got to be one of the deadliest techniques. Oh, you know, you can make it work whether you're fishing 20 foot deep or 3 inches under the water like I was catching them at the Red River. I mean, finesse versions of it. I mean, what I was doing there was obviously not a finesse technique. I mean, I had 50-pound braided line and a 3/8 ounce 4x4 spoon, and you know, I had it on big line and a big rod, and the jig has a really big heavy hook in it. So there was nothing finesse about what I was doing. How heavy was the jig, Randall? 3/8 is what I was using. That's a good sized jig for anybody that doesn't know. A 3/8 ounce jig is a real jig. Oh yeah, and the one I was using has a really big heavy hook in it, which I felt was key, you know, in getting the fish out of the lily pads that I was fishing there. What brand jig was it? It was a 4x4, which you can go to their website, 4x4jigs.com, and they should have the jig that I won with on there. in the next few days available for sale.
Great.
4x4bassjigs.com.
4x4bassjigs.com. All right, Randall, we got to take a quick break, and then I want to come back and ask you everything about everything, all right?
Okay, that sounds good.
All right, stay with us, folks. We'll be right back with the 2013 FLW Forrest Wood champion, Randall Tharp. Don't go away.
This is my rock.
More of America's favorite outdoor talk program, Outdoors This Week, after these messages.
Drag your crankbait right in front of my face. Take your presentations to some other place.
Wow! Woo. Hold on to that, and that's a good one since 1984. Tight Lines with Sammy Lee.
If you fish a plastic worm, then you know that there are a number of different things to have, use, and remember to catch bass on them. But is there a correct way to set the hook? Hello, this is Sammy Lee. In just a moment, former Bassmaster Classic winner Larry Nixon will answer that question. But first, this message.
Want to really get away from it all? That'd be South Dakota's Cheyenne Ridge Signature Lodge in Lake Oahe. 230 miles of world-class smallmouth, trophy northern pike, and walleye galore. And after you get your limit, get out your golf gloves for a few rounds at Sutton Bay. It's not your ordinary trip to the lake. It's Canadian-style fishing with American-style luxury at Cheyenne Ridge Signature Lodge. You'll want to take a look online at CheyenneRidge.com.
Larry Nixon, is there a correct way to set the hook when fishing with a plastic worm?
Well, there's really, it's kind of like hooks and worms, there's different sets for different situations, and it's hard to control yourself and do it properly all the time. I know every now and then I find myself on a fish that's not over 20 feet or 30 feet away from the boat, and where you're better off then just kind of just raising up against the fish and feeling him and setting the hook sideways. Just not really a hook set, but a pull set. I find myself wanting to snap set this fish sometimes, which is a lot of times is not the best style of hook set. Normally a good snap set and a good upward pop of the wrist is better on deep water structure fishing or on a long cast, because you've got so much line out there that you have to exert some shock on the other end of it in order to get the hook into the fish. But yet one up close to the boat that's got a hold of your worm and maybe moving sideways with it, if you snap set him, all you do basically is jam the sinker up against his mouth, and he reacts and jumps out of the water, and you don't even have the hook in the fish, and he throws a worm on you. Where a pull set, you just kind of pull it into him and he struggles back against you and more or less hooks himself. So there's really not one surefire way of setting the hook all the time.
Larry Nixon will be here again next time to talk about the best way to work a plastic worm. So I hope you'll join us. I'm Sammy Lee, and until next time, Tight Lines.
Tight Lines, brought to you by HuntMate, the ultimate hunting app for your iPhone. By UFP, America's leading maker of brake systems for boat trailers. And by Cheyenne Ridge Signature Lodge. Discover why our lodge earned 2 Beretta Tridents.
My wife calls me a twit, but now I'm tweeting at www.twitter.com/TightLinesRadio. So join me daily for this update on fishing news and information.
Thanks, Sammy Lee. And there he goes in his big Tweety Bird suit. We have with us today the 2013 FLW Forrest Wood champion. He just won the championship within the last couple of weeks. His name is Randall Tharp, and he hails from Birmingham, Alabama, and he's originally from Florida, from Port St. Joe. For some individuals, fishing come naturally. They have an intuitive gift of finding fish and an inherent knack for catching them. Randall just happens to be one of those people. Randall, I know exactly what that means because I have a friend that's a born fisherman. I'm not a born fisherman, but I get there through a lot of work and sweat and everything like that. But he just knows where the fish are. Did you always know where the fish were?
I realized pretty early in my career, that I had a little something that a lot of guys didn't have. I mean, I saw a lot of guys working hard like I was. Hard work and having the equipment is just a small part of the equation when you're trying to make a living fishing. And, I think all of the top anglers have it, and I think it's the ability to make gut decisions on the water, and right. And that's what wins tournaments is decision making.
Your gut is such an important thing because, even Rick Clunn and like Larry Nixon that we just heard, some of the greats, it's got to be a gut decision that you act on right away.
It really is, and I think that's what separates the guys at the top. Guys like Larry and Rick and the Jason Christies and Andy Morgans, guys like that, I mean, they all are really good at making gut decisions, right. And that's what separates the guys at the tour level from your average tournament fisherman, I think.
You're right. Tell me about the swimming jig on the Red River. Describe for our audience exactly how you swam your jig. Did you engage the reel right when it hit the water, when it splashed down, or did you do something different?
No, I was making really long, accurate casts, just fishing it through small little holes and lanes in some really thick lily pad fields. I would try to let the jig land as quiet as possible, and as soon as it would hit the water, I would start reeling at a fairly quick pace, and the entire time I was doing that, I was popping my rod tip, which I call that pulsing a jig. It makes the jig skirt flare every time you pop the rod tip, and I kept it, I would say, in the top 1 foot of the water column the entire time.
It was almost like bulging a spinnerbait, if I'm going to make a comparison, under the water.
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, that's a very unique technique that I was using. I mean, it's something that I learned, on the Coosa River years ago when I first started bass fishing, and it doesn't work everywhere. It doesn't work well in Florida, but I mean, it works really good in Alabama, and it obviously worked pretty good at the Red River.
Are there techniques that you find work in rivers and don't work in lakes and vice versa?
The technique I was using, I mean, it's something real specific. It doesn't work everywhere. It's something I learned, years ago on the Coosa River. It's a very effective technique, swimming it through the willow grass there, and it works on the Red River. It worked really well. I don't think any of the other guys in the field were swimming the jig at all, and then obviously that's a very unique technique that I was using, and it obviously worked good enough to get the win last week.
Would you say that was your ace in the hole that nobody else had?
Without a doubt, it carried me the first 3 days, and I caught that really big bag on the first day, exclusively on that jig. So without a doubt, I mean, that was my winning lure. Obviously there were several other lures that came into play, but I felt like the jig was the best thing I had going.
Right. Describe to me how and when they hit the jig.
It was a pretty violent strike most of the time. I mean, they would at the beginning of the tournament, they would come 6 or 7 feet to get it. I could see the pads move. I could see the fish making a wake. And as the tournament wore on, though, you had to be more precise with your cast. I mean, they weren't real aggressive. I mean, they were just heavily pressured, and it got harder and harder to catch one, right, regardless what it was on. But it was a pretty intense fight, especially when you're fishing for $500,000. You can see the fish coming to get the jig.
Absolutely. All the alarm bells are going off in your head. The red light is flashing, and the bells are ringing, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it's something that, I don't know this average guy. It takes a lot of patience sometimes to let the fish eat it and let him swim off a foot or two before I set the hook. I mean, because it would take them a second to get that jig in their mouth, and I think that was another key. I lost 2 fish on day 3.
Would you let him have it for like a split second before you set the hook?
Yes, I would, and I wouldn't say that each fight was exactly the same. Some of them I set on sooner than others, but I think that's something, you just have a split second to make that decision, and right, and every bite is different, and I think it's something that has to be assessed that quick every time you get a bite.
It takes everything in you not to set the hook when you get a violent strike. How did you pace yourself?
It's just something that I have. It's I can't really describe how I know, when to set the hook. I've won a lot of money fishing a frog. I caught 3 really big fish on a frog the 3rd day of this event as well, and every one of those bites was different. I had to wait to set the hook on all of those just to make sure the fish had the bait in its mouth, and my hook ratio on the frog seemed to be a lot better than the jig. I caught everyone that bit the frog the final day.
Really? There were a lot of other guys throwing the frog as well in the Red River tournament. We got to take a break right now, and when we come back, Randall, I'm gonna ask you about the frog, all right?
Okay, that sounds good.
All right, folks, we'll be right back with the 2013 FLW Forrest Wood Cup champion, Randall Tharp. Don't go away.
I'm hooked on hooking up.
Hey, what do you think you're doing? Don't change that dial. Alex will be right back with more of Outdoors This Week after these messages.
The bigger the better.
Big
Big whitetail bucks can live in some of the least obvious places. Chris Parrish of Missouri has taken some giant bucks over the years, and several have come from little cover patches that most hunters would never consider hunting. Chris says basically if it can hide a rabbit, it can hide a deer. I'm Wade Bourne, and this is Wired to Hunt Radio. Today, some wise advice about scouting for the upcoming deer season.
More Wired to Hunt Radio coming up.
Cabela's is the world's foremost outfitter for hunting, fishing, camping, and outdoor gear. They offer more gear than anybody, best selection, prices, and quality, all backed by Cabela's legendary guarantee. Shopping with Cabela's has never been easier or more convenient. You can outfit all your needs through Cabela's catalogs, website, and their many stores. Check them out at Cabela's.com. Cabela's, the world's foremost outfitter. Hey, waterfowl hunters, if you need a shotgun for the new season, check out Mossberg's pumps and autoloaders. They come in black synthetic and camo finishes. They shoot 3 and 3.5 inch shells. They offer great dependability and value. Mossberg is America's oldest family-owned and operated firearms manufacturer. Check out Mossberg shotguns online at mossberg.com. Also, be watching for the new series of Mossberg Duck Commander shotguns later this fall. Mossberg, built rugged, proudly American.
This is Wired to Hunt Radio.
Chris Parrish knows a deer hunting secret. Big bucks hang out in little thickets and gullies and insignificant places that most hunters overlook. Chris says when you're scouting in the weeks ahead, check out the little cover patches and big wide open areas.
People don't realize it doesn't take a lot of cover to hold on to a deer. A little bit of cover and a lot of food supply, you can have a pretty good number of deer there. I know a lot of the deer that I take, some of those are just on little 120-acre farms that don't have but 30 or 40 acres of timber. But they funnel through there because there's bigger blocks in there. And learn to look at the lay of the land and how it pertains to deer movement, and you'll realize it doesn't take a lot. If it's the right, I always say to people, if it's the right 80 acres, that's the one you want to hunt. So little bitty patches of nothing in the middle of nowhere. In fact, I've seen some monster deer chase doe in Iowa around little old woodlots that just had a pond in there that wasn't a couple of acres. And he'd get up in there and get sequestered with a doe during the rut. You wouldn't even know he was there unless you caught him moving. So, don't go beyond taking that little extra walk out in the middle through that middle of that field and bump a little place that looks like there would be nothing living in it, because you might be surprised what comes up out of there.
That's Chris Parrish, and tomorrow Chris returns to talk about the whitetail deer's amazing adaptability. And that's also today's Wired to Hunt Radio. I'm Wade Bourne saying thanks for listening and get outside.
Thanks a lot, Wade. That applies to fishing, too. If you got a little stick that can hold a minnow, it can just as easily hold a 10-pound bass, and believe me, you won't see them. So there's an application for fishing there, too. We have with us today Randall Tharp, who is the winner of the most recent FLW Cup in the past month. We were just talking to Randall about his win of the FLW Cup on the Red River, and Randall is from Birmingham, Alabama, originally from Florida. Randall, we were talking about the topwater frog. First of all, what kind of a frog were you using?
I used two different ones that final day. I used a Bronze-Eye 65. It was black with blue tails, and I also used a smaller one, which was white with orange tails. I'm not sure the color had that much to do with it, just where I was fishing it was more important.
The color wasn't as important as the location. These were hollow-bodied frogs, is that correct?
Right, and the first good bite I had the final day, I was fishing around some cypress trees, and that was more of a open water technique where I was fishing kind of fast, covering a lot of water, and then, later in that final day, I went to my pad fields where I was swimming the jig, and I got the bigger frog out, and I fished extremely slow to get the final two big bites that I got that day. And, some casts I would estimate took me more than a minute and a half before I retrieved the lure all the way in, and that's something that's been really good to me in my career, fishing a frog really slow and really thick cover.
Describe the retrieve for our listeners. After it hit the water, what would you do?
I would really just let it sit there motionless. In any hole. It was so thick there wasn't a lot of open water. Most of the time the frog was coming across the top of a lily pad. But whenever I'd get it into a little seam or an opening, that's when I would just let it sit there, and that's when every bite that I had on it occurred. It's just when it was sitting motionless in a hole. Those bass that I was catching were all feeding on bluegill, and I think that's what the frog imitated,
Right.
was a bluegill.
Were there any other baits that you used in the championship?
Yeah, square-bill crankbait was instrumental. I mean, that was really my limit bait. I would catch some fish swimming a jig or on the frog or a couple fish flipping, but then I would fill my limit out with that crankbait, and I was just basically fishing. It was about 6 to 8 inches, maybe even a foot deep, and I was right up against some riprap banks in an oxbow lake off the river, and that was, I could really catch more fish doing that than any other way, but size was an issue with the crankbait. I really used that bait and that technique just to fill my limit out every day.
Right. So you'd catch bass, but they were on the average smaller than you would catch with the frog or the jig. Is that what I'm understanding? Yeah. Okay.
That's correct. I mean, the fish in the lily pads that's where the big ones were, and the frog and the swim jig was definitely the best way to catch them in that particular type situation.
Right. What made you want to become a tournament angler?
I've been fishing tournaments probably since the early 2000s. I never had a desire or like, hey, I want to be a pro bass fisherman. I mean, for me, I'm a competitive person, and it doesn't matter if I'm playing golf or you name it. I like to win, and obviously I love fishing a lot, and it was, I fished tournaments for quite a while before I ever had, was faced with that decision. I mean, it's just I wanted to continue to challenge myself, and every level I competed at, I got to where I dominated, and that's really when I got to the position where in 2008, I quit my job and I won 3 events that year, and I mean, that was when I really made the decisions like, hey, I mean, if I'm going to continue to become a better angler, then I need to fish against the best guys in the world, and that was the point in my career when I made that decision, was about 2007, 2008.
Did you start winning tournaments after you made the decision or before?
Oh, no, I've won at every level I've competed at, from fishing club tournaments in the early 2000s to BFL events, and then obviously I moved up from there to the regional level tournaments, and that's I set goals every year, and Angler of the Year is important to me every year, as well as winning championships.
Randall, I've got a million more questions to ask you, but only about a minute of time left before the show is over. Who were your angling heroes and why? Give me the best you can do in 1 minute.
Well, I fished against one of them in this tournament. Larry Nixon has always been a huge inspiration for me, but before Larry, I would have to say Hank Parker. I mean, that was one of my first memories of tournament fisherman, was when he won his second classic, and those two guys probably as much as anybody influenced me more. And nowadays, I would say, Kevin Van Dam and Jason Christie right now, and my good friend Andy Morgan. I mean, all of those guys are huge influences to me right now.
Randall Tharp, thanks for being on the show. And where can people find out more about you on the internet?
Well, I'm on Facebook and Twitter. You can go to my website with randytharp.com and find out, have a link to all of my social media stuff. And, that stuff is updated at just about daily now. So click on my website and check it out.
All right, Randy, we're all going to go there. And, folks, thanks for being with us. We'll be back next time on Outdoors This Week. Bye-bye.
Alex Langer, Outdoors This Week.